September 2025, and I'm here once again to talk to you about stuff, and specifically Bitcoin versus the cost of living. Which is better? Which is the winner, essentially? Which one is increasing better? Are you getting more Bitcoin returns in a year on average than the average cost of living increase? Or is the cost of living going up more than the average Bitcoin returns per year? Well, if you just zoom out on the map, the chart, whatever you want to call it, you can see that from the beginning of 2009, uh, when Bitcoin first hit the market, it was free. And, it was the cost of mining it, or somebody sent you some for free, or for practically nothing, because it didn't have a price really on the market at the time. When it started on the market, it launched at 0 cents, and it has risen over the past 16 years more than 20 billion% to the highs recently at 124,000, whatever they were. So divide 20 billion by 16 years, and you can see what the annual return on investment is if you've been holding on to it that long. And it's obviously very clear that Bitcoin has been returning better profitability, has been giving you more returns than the cost of living has been going up, despite the fact that the cost of living has been going up a lot in the last 20 years. But by the way, it's been going up a lot for the past 100 years, really. Yes, there were periods when it seemed to be more stable than other periods, uh, and certainly the last decade and more have been more dramatic than before in some ways. And part of the reason is because, well, over the past decade, we've reached a stage with fiat currency where we have hyperinflation happening in some markets. Right? We had it in Zimbabwe at the turn of the millennia. We had it in Venezuela over the past 10 or so years, maybe even a bit more. Actually, pretty much we saw hyperinflation really be a thing even as far back as the early 2000s, like 2006, 2007 in South America, and get really ridiculously bad some years after that. Um, but yeah, basically we saw even in the U.S. economy, the price of things has gone up more than 7% a year, in the sense of your purchasing power on the dollar has been dropping more than 7% a year on average, which is a pretty rapid decline compared to the usual 3, 4, 5% that we would see for many years before that. But it's to be expected because, again, we have reached a point where we have accumulated so much debt in the US economy that we see the status of the economy has basically reached a crux where we need to either figure out a way to reduce the debt significantly. That's not likely to happen because everybody wants their social programs and their entitlements. And the fact that as much as people say wages are going up, it doesn't matter if wages are going up. Wages are so far behind where they used to be in terms of the disparity between the haves and have nots, or even the wealthy and the working class, right? And the cost of living versus the wages, right? That delta, the cost of living versus wages, which is a chart you can easily pull up over the last 55 years, the gap has been pretty much only increasing. And it's only since 2020 that you've seen a few occasions where, hello there, I see you, where we see a few occasions since 2020 where the wages went up a little bit higher than the actual cost of living, which means that for more than 50 years, people going to work with all the efficiencies of computers and technology have been working harder and longer hours to be more productive and generate more profit for their companies, and yet are getting paid less and less for that same work. Go figure. And the only reason they're allowed to do that is because the corporatists who hire the vast majority of people, and I know you're going to tell me, well, a lot of people are freelancers. Yeah, sure. A lot of people are freelancers, and many of them are not satisfied with their work as freelancers. And number one reason people become freelancers is because they were really not satisfied with their work working for corporatists. But as freelancers, they suffer a lot too in many cases. Right? Most people in freelancing need to work extremely long hours, 7 days a week, and barely get by. And they do it not because they want to, but because that's their only choice to find this, to scrape by. So we see a continuing disparity between the average wage and the costs of living in the US, in Europe, in Asia, and frankly around the world. And it doesn't matter. I know you can tell me, well, the economy is picking up in Venezuela now or whatever, which it's not, but let's just say it is. Yeah, sure, then you'll have great, phenomenal rises. Wow, salaries increased 300% this year in whatever third world country. Sure, because when they were, making on average $500 a year, and now they're making $1,500 a year. Great, now they're making, 3 times as much as they were before, or whatever. They're making $2,000 a year, and so yeah, it went up 300%. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily living better, because their cost of living also goes up, right? Even in the third world, prices go up over time, right? It doesn't matter where you are. The more the fiat currencies keep getting printed, the lower their purchasing power is. And if your wages are not going up in line with the cost of living, you're losing purchasing power over time. So what can you do to counteract that? Well, that's why Bitcoin exists, right? It was created as, yes, an electronic peer-to-peer cash network that secures itself. But more than that, it was designed to be an escape hatch from the traditional financial system. That's literally what it is. Right? So if you hold enough of it, if you hold the Bitcoin or more, right, fantastic, you're a winner, right? Like, you probably don't need to have a traditional job if you don't really want to. If you have at least one or more Bitcoins in your account, and you can live a modest life. Most people, though, don't want to live a modest life, and so they'll probably need, maybe at least 10 or 20 Bitcoins to sit comfortably in their account and be able to live on just the returns that they get every year in terms of its growth. And that would mean that you would be using a sliver of your holdings every year to pay for your costs. But then you need to generate more income. So how can you do that? Well, one relatively easy way to do that, although I don't recommend it, but it's an easy way to do it if you have enough in your portfolio and you are willing to do that, is people stake their holdings, right? So they stake their Bitcoins in certain platforms that give you yield for staking Bitcoin. Even though you can't stake Bitcoin natively, you can stake through third-party services. Would I recommend that? I don't. Why? Well, because look at Celsius. People did that and they lost all their money. Well, is it safe to stake across many different places, or is it wiser to stake across many different places? That way, in case one goes down, at least the other 4 or 5 or 10 places you stake at don't. I mean, in theory, sure, but what happens if a bunch of them go down at once? You lose all those coins. Personally, I wouldn't do that. I would find another way to generate some kind of revenue. Whatever your proficiency is, do that. Maybe you're a trader, in which case you don't have to think about that. You can just go and trade this stuff. Maybe you're an entrepreneur. You can maybe have your own business that you run, Maybe you want to be an entrepreneur. Well, there's no shortage of ways to start up businesses if you're in, especially if you're in the right location. And when I say that, I mean, I know you can start up a business anywhere in theory, but there are actual limitations in certain contexts. So, what do I mean by that? I mean, there are certain contexts in which you might be in an area even full of people, but your particular profession may not have any demand in that location. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. Um, so you need to either be in a location where there is a lot of opportunity to do business, or you need to go to such a location, right, to do business, or you need to figure out how to do that business using online systems, or you need to switch your proficiencies and make new connections and maybe learn a new skill, learn a new trade, learn a new profession, and then, you know, obviously doing something relevant to your location, and then, start going after business in that way, right? Um, for example, if you build boats and you live in a desert, you're probably not going to be selling many boats. If I mean, I know it sounds like an extreme example, but there are many examples like this that are actually real world practical examples, right? If you, for example, if you live, for example, in, you know, some location that is just full of retirees, and all you do is provide children's services, parties for children, birthday parties for children, etc., with clowns and sing-alongs and all this stuff. Well, maybe you need to pivot your business to cater to retirees, right? To do birthday parties for retirees, or for or to find a bunch of retirees who have their grandchildren coming over to celebrate their birthdays or whatever, right? So, it's just a more local, practical example. If you are live, and also sometimes you may be in a location where there's a ton of competition, and it may be practically impossible for you to break in as by yourself, right? So you might need some time and networking and experience in that location in order to make new contacts, make new connections, and basically, have a new set of business customers, right? So, for example, if you're trying to sell baguettes in Paris, you better work in some Parisian bakeries before, boulangerie, before you try to open up your own Parisian bakery, unless you have a wealth of contacts and experience that are relevant that you bring to the table even before you've worked in a Parisian boulangerie. But the probability of that is pretty low. So the easiest thing to do would be for you to make contacts in Paris that are in the baking profession, the boulangerie profession, learn how the market operates, learn how you can open your bakery, learn who the customers are in the area where you want to work, understand the needs of the market, understand the supply and demand, etc., etc. Right? So context matters a lot, right? If you're trying to sell products and services online, then you need to sell products and services to people who already want to buy what you're selling electronically, right? Maybe you're selling software, maybe you're selling creative arts, maybe you're selling God knows what, any kind of product or service that you might sell digitally. Maybe you're selling advertising services, right? Marketing services, website creation services, graphic design services, anything, right? AI workflow automation services, translation services, you name it. You need to find the customers that want to buy from you even before you approach them. Like they're looking for that solution. And so you're approaching them with something they already want. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to offer them something that is a no-brainer. And by no-brainer, I mean you're offering them something that's worth $2, and you're selling it to them for $1. Okay, or you're selling it to them for 1,000, but it's worth 2,000, or you're selling it to them for 10,000, it's worth 20,000. Give them some kind of significant, quantifiable value that they can easily see why it's worth paying you the amount that you're asking for, so that you don't have to worry about focusing on uh, a long sales pitch, a long sales cycle. Sure, if you are selling products that are complicated, high ticket items, well, that is something that you certainly can do. But you have to make sure that the reward is worth the investment, because it's a risk reward calculation. And if you don't have a good risk reward calculation, if you're investing too much time to make a sale, then it's simply not financially worthwhile, probably, right? That's why if you have the choice, it is better to sell products that sell themselves rather than you having to pitch them and sell them. Right? You just literally tell people what your offer is, you show them the benefit of that sale, and you let them make the obvious choice so that they know exactly why it's worth paying you whatever you're asking for, right? So, for example, if you have software that lets people optimize their advertising, and you can demonstrate that you can save them, $500 a month on their spend, and you only charge $50 for it, that's worthwhile. That's a no-brainer. If you can show them that your system lets them invest in your service, and you help them generate, 5x more revenue, or even 20% more revenue, okay, per year, right, on a month basis, and you're able to help them generate 20% more revenue, well, then they'd be fools not to pay you between 2 and 5% or 7% of the amount that they're making, right? It could even be 10%. If you're doing the actual work of a service, you can charge them 10 or 20% for that service, because when you're doing the actual work as a service, you're putting in more effort than if your system is automated and scalable. If you have an automated, scalable system, then you can charge them actually less, right? Because it's so. For example, if you're charging somebody $2,000 a month to do the work yourself, you're making sure that it's perfectly fine and good, and there are no problems, and you're personally managing it. So yeah, you're going to charge a little bit more because you're personally spending a lot of time making sure that everything's going okay for them. But if you have an automated system that's scalable, you can sell massive amounts of clients the same product or service, then you actually should charge them less money, because you will, even though you'll be delivering kind of a similar service, it's automated, which means you spend less time on it, which means you're not as dedicated and focused on it as they would expect you to be on a personalized service, which means you should charge less than that. But the beauty of it is it's easier to sell, and it's easier to deliver the service. It's easier to maintain that customer. So you can make $1,000 without having to invest, $800 or $1,200 worth of work. Whereas, as opposed to, because you've already built the system and it's automated. Whereas whereas a personalized system, you'll have to invest a lot of time and money each time you deliver work for a new client or for an existing client month to month, because they'll expect you to be delivering work and delivering results on a monthly basis. And that means you have to put in a lot of time and effort yourself. So if you're kind of new to business, it's often easier to sell products where you do the work yourself and it's personalized, and you charge a bit more. But once you have enough experience, then the goal really is to do work that is automated and scalable, so you can sell massive amounts of $1,000 products, as opposed to a small number of $2,500 products. Because you got to remember, when you're doing the work yourself, your time is limited, and you can only work so many hours in a day because there's only 24 hours in a day. Whereas if you're working with an automated system, you're not doing that work. The automated system is doing that work. And that means that your time is limitless. and you're not making money per hour, you're making money per customer. The system is handling itself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't have to worry about that. You just have to make sure that your system works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and continues to deliver great results. And as long as it does, well, people who are making money from you and um, see that it has value and they're making money from you and you're charging them far less than it costs them to make the money, they would be foolish not to keep paying you, right? They're going to keep paying you. Like if maybe you offer them something like PayPal, right? When you build the next PayPal and you charge them whatever it is, anywhere from 1% to 5% on their transactions, well, if you're helping them make more money, they will gladly keep paying you that 1% to 5% fee as long as it's many times less what they're making per month, right? Why wouldn't they? Think of any system or service or product that you might buy or get access to, right? That you pay for, any subscription that you pay for, right? Maybe you pay for YouTube Premium, right? And maybe you pay for YouTube Premium in order to save yourself the time of not watching the ads. Maybe for you, time is your currency. If time is your currency, and you see that skipping the ads makes your life better, your quality of life better, is that worth the $5 or $6 or $10 or whatever you pay per month for your YouTube Premium? If it is, you're going to keep paying them, right? Because the time is your currency. It's probably worth the $10 a month or less, right? If you are, buying whatever it might be, right? I mean, you're reselling batteries for calculators, and it doesn't matter, right? You're selling batteries for calculators, and you've got a decent customer base because you sell to schools in your local area, okay? And they constantly need to buy batteries every school year or something. So you're selling, every summer you're selling massive amounts of batteries. If you're making all that money selling those batteries every year, and the fee from the company that you pay through, right? The point of sale company is only charging you 1 or 3 or 5%, and that's included in your costs, and you're able to eat that without a financial loss, and you're making a good profit selling those batteries. You're probably going to keep working with that financial payment company, unless there's an even better one that comes along and offers an even better service that replaces that. But if you offer something that's identical to or only a little bit better than something else, people aren't likely to switch for something that's just a little bit better. They're usually looking for something that's significantly better. Otherwise, it's probably not worth the headache to switch. And that's very much true. Hello there. Okay, hello, JJ. Uman, are you in Uman? All right, well, happy Uman to you. Hope you're having a great time out there. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for now. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, share, all that stuff. I'd like to see more people seeing these videos. Also, I am curious because this is my personal channel. I I talk about all kinds of stuff. If you would prefer to watch specific videos on a channel that focuses specifically on one topic only, let me know. Or drop a comment. Like, would you prefer that I only talk about marketing or business, or only talk about crypto, or only talk about political issues, or only talk about whatever on this channel? I'm just curious and to know what you guys think. Maybe I'll make different channels to focus specifically on exclusive topics, but this is my personal channel, so I kind of like to talk about whatever stuff I like here. I'm just curious, do you guys have a preference about what I talk about on my personal channel? Just a matter of curiosity, nothing more. Maybe I won't even do it, even if you guys all say yes. Make sure that you only talk about one topic. I'll probably still talk about every topic, but I'm curious. I am wondering because as of now, all these years later, I've never seen any reason to not just talk about whatever I want on this channel, since it is my personal channel and it is tiny, as you can see. So it's not like I do this for money or anything. I share these videos because I enjoy sharing the things that I know about. Hopefully, you find it useful and helpful. And that's it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.